I want to move on in a minute because I've got.
Who are you, JD
so
Vance?
Andy,
No, break the tie.
I'm break
Andy,
the tie.
go.
Carl is right, Tom. You're wrong. This was a totally legitimate question. He did ask. He did raise it. Welcome to Real Clear Politics for Monday, October 13th. I'm Andrew Walworth, and joining me are RCP President and co-founder Tom Bevan and Washington Bureau Chief Carl Cannon. So, gentlemen, the living hostages have been reunited with their families in Israel. Trump was in Israel and ended the day in Egypt, where he met with world leaders, signed this historic peace deal. Tom, I picked this soundbite from the many choices I had for the day. This is for you.
Thank you.
Here's Trump in Egypt.
I want to thank the media for you've been so respectful on this deal. You know the importance of the deal, and I really, it was so pleasant to watch. I was on the plane for quite a while listening to the various newscasts, and they were all fair. They were talking about how incredible this is. This is an incredible day for the world, let alone the Middle East. So I just wanted to thank the media. They really treated it with respect. I wish you could be like that on other things, but that's perhaps too much to ask for. But on this, tremendous, everybody feels the same. Just tremendous respect, and we appreciate it very much.
We start the week usually with a Tom Bevan media rant over something that happened over the weekend, but I thought when I heard this, I said, wow, let's see what Tom says about this.
You're trying to stump me? Is that it?
Yeah.
Start the show. You know, what's funny about that is there's a clip of him. He was gaggling on Air Force One on the way over there, and someone asked him a question about this, and he said, who are you with, Politico? It was Dasher Burns, I think. And he said, oh, you're the worst. Yeah, he just ran him down like he usually does. And then Peter Doocy asked him a question about, Tony Blinken trying to take credit for this. And so he was very much himself on the way over there. I don't know what got into him in that speech. But look, it is a historic achievement. And we saw, honestly, if you haven't seen, you should go and watch the videos of these families being reunited with their loved ones who were held hostages for over 2 years. It's impossible not to get emotional watching this and putting yourself in the place of those parents who've been wondering and worrying about their children for 728 days or whatever the number is, and putting yourself in their place. Truly, truly emotional. And, it was I think everybody was very effusive in their praise for Donald Trump when he spoke in front of the Knesset. And I hope that, he said, look, in Egypt, he said, look, it took us 3,000 years to get here, but I think this is going to last. I hope that's the case. But I hope they're also not sort of, maybe doing the victory lap a little prematurely. There's a lot of work that's left to be done. But certainly, as far as the release of the hostages goes, it was a huge achievement and a huge release on the part of certainly all the Israelis.
Carl, what'd you make of the day?
Well, you don't want to be a negative Nelly, but
you only say that when you're about to be a negative Nelly, Carl.
But yeah, these hostages. So 20 of them returned. There were several dozen that were killed in captivity over there. There were all of these Israeli soldiers killed in fighting in Gaza. There were all these civilians slaughtered on October 7th. There were all these, 60,000 Gazans are dead. If you've cut that number in half, and if you cut it in half again, because most of the people killed were probably combatants, that's still a lot of death, a lot of civilians, innocent people in Gaza killed. And what you get out of it is, the Palestinians get all these prisoners back. Some of them were just rounded up and sweeps. Some of them are convicted murderers. And we have to see this is a 20-point plan. I think we're on point 2. There's 18 more to go. And Hamas has to disarm. It has to forswear violence. These other Arab nations have to keep following through. This is a lot of work. And I'm encouraged by what I see. And I certainly think the president and his team, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, Marco Rubio, deserve credit. I think Bibi Netanyahu deserves a lot of credit. But this is the first inning of a doubleheader. And while hearing the president speak today like this was all done, maybe he's trying to just be positive about it, encourage people. And, he was raised on the power of positive thinking. And literally the book, the religion, that's his that version of Christianity that he was raised in. So I see what he's trying to do, but I just think we need to be careful here and make sure we do all of the follow through work, rebuilding Gaza, rebuilding the schools in the Arab world so that they don't preach hate. There's just a lot.
Carl,
there's a lot to do.
What should he have done? You just thought this was too much, or?
Well, I thought an hour and 5 minutes.
Should he not have gone to? Should he not have gone to Israel?
No, I just thought an hour and 5 minute meandering speech was a little much, but that's just how he is, right? No, he did. What he did today is what he should have done. He went to the Knesset. He was kind of a healing force there. The opposition leader spoke. Netanyahu spoke, then the president spoke. He had sort of puckishly called on, pardons to be issued there in the Knesset for these warring political factions. Then he went to Sharm el-Sheikh. I mean, I went to Sharm 20 years ago now with President Bush, George W. Bush, and the Palestinians were there negotiating, and nothing ever happened. And then there was a terrorist attack on that beautiful seaside town. So, yeah, look, this is good. He seems to have broken the logjam, and you wonder why. Maybe Iran had a stranglehold on things there, but he's so unpredictable. Who knows maybe this is what it was needed. A person who just sort of threw convention out the window and just said, this is what we're going to do. Maybe Donald Trump was the missing ingredient.
Well, I think there's something to that. I also think when you look at who was at this meeting, you had the Qataris there, you had Turkey there. I mean, Iran wasn't there, but Iran is largely a spent force for the moment, at least. It does raise the question, I hate to raise it, but is it different this time, Tom? Because
why do you hate to raise that question?
Well, because it sounds naive. I mean, everyone, the first thing out of everyone
Lucy with the football.
Everyone I talk to, they say, well, this is, and choose your metaphor. It's the beginning of the end of the beginning. It's the beginning of the doubleheader, or whatever. But everyone, the sophisticated thing to say at this point is, well,
Carl certainly is sophisticated,
and Carl's sophisticated.
Yeah, I already have that.
So I'm raising
I have that cornered, Andy. The Pacific. You can go ahead and be kind of every man.
I am.
So are you saying the unsophisticated thing to say is what Trump says, which is, this is it. It's done.
Yes.
It's holding for all eternity.
My question is it different this time? Is it possible that maybe he's done it?
Of course. Look, of course it's possible that it's different. It's also possible that it's just more of the same. And we will look back on this and feel like Lucy with the football. Like, we really thought it was going to be different this time because of X, Y, and Z. And we're back to where we were, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But I do think something seems to be different this time. And we've talked about this repeatedly, how the dynamics in the region with Iran, as you mentioned, being sort of decimated and on their back foot, with Hezbollah being obliterated. It just seems like it's a different environment, and that may have given it, created the space for, there's this, piece in the Wall Street Journal about how Hamas got basically forced into a deal that it didn't want because they were getting pressure from other Muslim leaders in the Middle East. And so it does seem like this could be different, and we all hope it is different, but obviously we can't know until it plays itself out.
Yeah.
Tom, can I say, I want to comment one thing. You reminded me when you said that, Tom. So it also raises the question, who is Hamas at this point? The IDF decapitated their leadership and killed most of their fighters. Their proxy, the country that armed them and encouraged them and told them what to do, Iran, has been neutered for the time being. So when you're dealing with Hamas, maybe you're dealing with a new generation of people who've seen that war as a dead end. I mean, it's possible that Hamas has changed, not because they changed their minds, but because these are different people.
I mean, it's totally not a good parallel, I suppose, but I think of Northern Ireland at moments like this, where you have, a division that you thought that could never be bridged, and generations and generations and generations of people who hated one another. And they say it's going to take about $53 billion. That's the World Bank estimate to rebuild Gaza. But
Trump could sell Truth Social at this point and pay for half of it himself.
That's right. I mean, it's a rounding error. I mean, can you imagine when you look at the devastation there and think, well, could you really rebuild this, make it a free trade zone, make it
I think Trump,
like Tel Aviv. If you go to Tel Aviv, it's like being in Southern California. It's really amazing. I mean, you could
I certainly
imagine
think that
Gaza
Trump
being,
looks at that, and that's what he sees, Andy. I mean,
Yeah.
he sees the Riviera. I mean, he sees these beautiful glittering buildings and all the
Dubai
waterfront
is
property, and I mean, he
Yeah.
absolutely sees that, and that vision, and it's what he knows, it's what he loves, and that might actually keep him interested in this project. He might not just sort of wash his hands of it as this process moves on. I mean, he might want to actually take some ownership of that. I don't mean that in the physical sense, although
Come on.
I mean, I don't rule
Are you
that out
kidding?
either. But
He'll want a couple of hotels.
Trump Tower 2,
Yes.
Tower 3, Tower 4. No, but I think that's absolutely what he sees when he looks at that, and he sees all that rubble right now, and he can see the big, beautiful buildings rising up.
It's going to be a hell of a story, isn't it, Andy? Tony Blair's going to go there and live there and help run it. I mean, there's all this money going in. It's kind of fascinating.
Very interesting to see what happens. Last question, Carl, for you, because I think Sisi from Egypt, I think, was calling for U.S. troops to be involved in Gaza. Any chance that something like that happens? And would that be a deal breaker for Trump and for Americans?
I don't think so. As a peacekeeping force, we don't want to go. He doesn't want to go there. He's made it clear, and have the Marines do urban warfare and clean out the last pockets of Hamas. He's not interested in that.
They're busy in Chicago anyway, so
Well said, Tom.
Tom, any chance
in terms of a peacekeeping international peacekeeping force? That has not. I think that makes sense, and I don't think the president would be opposed to that. This is his baby now. You saw how proud he was today, how happy he was about this. He's taking credit for it. Taking credit for it implies that he'll take some responsibility for it as well.
Yeah, Tom, do you
I
think
agree.
Really?
I don't. I think that would upset some of the MAGA base if we actually put troops on the ground there. I mean, I suppose it's certainly, never say never, but as part of a multinational peacekeeping force, maybe, but I don't think we're going to see U.S. troops on the ground there anytime soon. I'll be shocked.
Carl, on Sunday, Vice President J.D. Vance was one-on-one on ABC with George Stephanopoulos. The interview went for about 12 and a half minutes. They covered a lot of ground, but at the end of the interview, Stephanopoulos asked about border czar Tom Homan and whether he had in fact accepted $50,000 in cash in a paper bag from undercover FBI agents. And here's part of the exchange. And this is also how it ended.
He was recorded on an audio tape in September 2024, an FBI surveillance tape, accepting $50,000 in cash. Did he keep that money?
Accepting $50,000 for doing what, George? I'm not even sure I understand the question. Is it illegal to take a payment for doing services? The FBI has not prosecuted him. I've never seen any evidence that he's engaged in criminal wrongdoing. Nobody has accused Tom of violating a crime, even the far left media like yourself. So I'm actually not sure what the precise question is. Did he accept $50,000? Honestly, George, I don't know the answer to that question. What I do know is that he didn't violate a crime. Let's talk about the real issues, George. I think the American people would benefit much more from that than from you going down some weird left-wing rabbit hole where the facts clearly show that Tom Homan didn't engage in any criminal wrongdoing.
It's not a weird left-wing rabbit hole. I didn't insinuate anything. I asked you whether Tom Homan accepted $50,000, as was heard on an audio tape recorded by the FBI in September 2024, and you did not answer the question. Thank you for your time this morning.
No, George, I said that I don't.
Up next, we'll be right back.
So, Carl, people are upset about this exchange. Anything wrong with it? What do you think?
I'm going to make Tom's head blow off his body.
Oh boy.
I'm going to defend Stephanopoulos in this instance. I think it's an obvious question, a legitimate question, and he asked it maybe in a belligerent way. And there's no reason J.D. Vance should know any more about it than anybody else. But first of all, then Vance insults him, attacks the question, calls him, says it's a left-wing rabbit hole. It's an obvious question when a cabinet official takes $50,000 in cash in a paper bag. I've heard of that. It was called abscam. Those people went to prison. And And for JD Vance to assert as a matter of fact that Homan committed no crime because the Trump administration's Justice Department hasn't charged him is sleight of hand, and Vance knows it. I think those are legit. It's a legitimate issue and it's a legitimate question. And I don't think Vance had no reason to get nasty with Stephanopoulos. And I don't blame George for losing his cool a little bit. He was insulted. He asked a professional question. He did it in a professional way. And I think this is a question that does need to be answered at some point.
The problem was, Carl, that as Andy mentioned, 12.5 minute interview, and they spent 3.5 minutes on this issue. And Vance answered the question, may not have been the answer that Stephanopoulos wanted. And he followed up, and then he followed up again, and then he kept badgering him and pushing him. And look, I think Vance, I'm not sure Vance handled this the best way. I think he should have said it at the beginning, what he said at the end, which is, I don't know, George. I don't know. Why does George Stephanopoulos think the vice president would know the details of this case? And if Vance had just said, I don't know, what's your next question? That would have been, and if Stephanopoulos kept wanting to badger him, then I think Vance would have been much more, within his rights to just be like, buddy, you're a left-wing, you're pursuing this, whatever. I told you I don't know. Let's move on to the next question. I'm the vice president of the United States. There's a lot of other stuff going on in the world. Why are you focused on this one, story incessantly? And so I think George Stephanopoulos, again, I'm not a fan. I think it also represents, in a more broad sense, these Sunday shows they're broken. They're absolutely broken. They've got these left-wing hosts, and they hardly have.
Wait. Stephanopoulos is not a left-wing guy. He's a mainstream Democrat. He's a mainstream Democrat. He worked for Bill Clinton and Richard Gephardt. What makes him left-wing?
R.I.P. your mentions, buddy. I mean, come on, really?
Okay.
Are they going to light me up in the comments?
I want to move on in a minute because I've got so much to get through today. But
Who are you,
I want to
JD
break
Vance?
the tie.
No, break the tie.
Break
go,
the
Andy,
tie.
go.
Carl is right, Tom. You're wrong. This was a totally legitimate question. He did raise a bunch of other questions, and he came this. And he spent 3.5 minutes on it. That's true, but that's because the vice president was just doing this dodge that they're all doing at the administration now, saying, well, he didn't break the law. He wouldn't answer the question. He didn't say until the end of the like 3 minutes in that he didn't know whether it was true or not. That's all he had to say. And then the final thing.
So you're agreeing with me. So I will break the tie in my favor.
No. I think it's a really important question. I would love to know the answer to it. The other thing I'll say about it too is that people are saying that he cut off Vance at the end. That's not true. He said goodbye to Vance, and then he was turning and ending the show, and Vance kept talking, and Vance's mic was open. So I don't know. Two hurrahs for Mr. Steph on this show so far. I want to talk about another thing though, and that is Abigail Spanberger. She's just having so much trouble answering these questions about her stance on trans athletes participating in women's sports. So this is another media clip. She muddled her answer in last week's debate. Here she is trying to clarify her stance on a local TV show, and I'm only going to play a little of this, but you'll get a sense.
What do you make of Earl Sears's claim that you're fine with, quote, putting men in girls' locker rooms?
The reality is that the federal government has the ability to change the letter of the law, right? Through Congress, through the Senate, bills go to the president's desk. Right now, what we are seeing is there are differences between what is the law of the land under Title IX and what are executive orders put out by the White House. And in circumstances where there are conflicting evidence or conflicting interpretations, the reality is the federal government has to be clear in what is the real guidance available to our schools as it relates to use of locker rooms.
So, Tom, it went on like that for about 3 minutes. You could watch the whole answer on X. I highly commend it to people. So she talks about the shutdown. She talks about research facilities. She talks about
crop
farmers,
rotation,
sustainability for farmers. I mean,
yes,
it was
rotational
really bad.
grazing practices.
I mean,
so what do you make of this? And how come they can't answer this question?
This was a word salad extraordinaire. I mean, he puts Kamala Harris to shame. I mean, she went on and on. She got trapped in this. I don't even know. She probably doesn't even know where she was going. All she knew was that A, she didn't want to answer the question, and B, she didn't want to stop because she didn't want him to follow up and ask again, but you didn't answer the question. Look, she's had trouble with this throughout the campaign. It's coming to a head now as we've gotten to the debates, and it's becoming more clear to people that she simply is trying to have it always, not even both ways, always. And when it's really a yes or no question, I mean, do you believe this? Yes, I believe it, or no, I don't. And here's why. And she can't bring herself to do that. And her obviously, her handlers, her consultants have all convinced her that, this is the proper way to handle this question. And she had been getting away with it for weeks and weeks and weeks. But I'm not sure she's getting away with it down here, in the final weeks of this campaign, the home stretch. And I do think it's one of those issues that, I mean, look, if you're a hardcore Democrat, you're gonna vote for Abigail Spanberger, regardless of what her position is on this. But I think this is one of those issues where sort of normie Dems, and I think there are some normie Dems, and maybe the northern counties of Virginia, that, especially with this stuff having been in the news, this is a policy that they don't agree with. And the fact she can't even take a stand on it one way or the other and tell people it's not leadership, and it might actually cost her some points in this race.
Yeah. But is it smart politics, Carl? And that she's up about 8 points in the Real Clear average. Is this rope-a-dope? She can just sort of, she can get through this without pissing off her left wing. Maybe she can get elected and then I don't know what she'll do then, but deal with it, I guess.
Well, we'll find out November 4th if it's smart politics. But yes, she is not just the left wing, the cultural, social, liberal base of the Democratic Party. Arlington County, Virginia, where I live, is where Arlington Democrats showed up with a sign on this issue and said to the lieutenant governor, who's black, if trans boys can't use girls' bathrooms, you can't drink at a white fountain or something like that.
Can't use my water fountain or something.
Yeah. So a friend of mine said, I don't think, who's a Democrat, said, I don't think that should be our talking point. If you don't cave in on transgender, we're going back to Jim Crow. But my point is, there's enough people like that Spanberger doesn't want to alienate them. But I'll say one thing, Tom, it's not just a yes or no answer. There's two separate issues here, really, and they sound like the same issue. The first is if you have a boy, born boy, what's the term?
A boy, just call it a boy. Jesus.
Assigned male at birth is the phrase they use. You have a boy.
He's a boy.
Who identifies as a girl and is in the process of transitioning, but still wants to play sports. These are complicated issues. They have an advantage over the girls, so there's a fairness issue. But should they never be allowed to play sports? This is an issue that lends itself to some nuance and compromise and thinking. But in Arlington, Virginia, and in Fairfax, Virginia, there's an example. It's a 58-year-old convicted sex offender. If you see his picture, he's got a stubble beard and long hair, and he was snooping in girls' bathrooms in the public swimming pools at the high school, at the pools, and undressing himself in front of 7-year-old girls. And the two Soros prosecutors in Arlington and Fairfax just declined to prosecute him. Finally, he did it again, and Arlington arrested him. Fairfax still won't prosecute him. This is not an academic issue in Virginia, and this is not a subtle thing where I can argue that the trans sports issues is complex. This is not complex. This creepy guy shouldn't be allowed in the locker rooms. But he said, no, I identify as a woman. You can't kick me out. And the police wouldn't do it. And the school board dressed down the parents who were offended. That's what Spanberger doesn't want to talk about.
So why can't she say that?
Well, she should, in my opinion. But that's what she's avoiding by this bizarre thing where should men be in girls' locker rooms? Well, we got to worry about crop rotation. And the other thing is, and she said, we need federal guidance. Well, to me, a leader, she wants to be governor of the Commonwealth.
Right.
A leader should say, look, the federal law is a hodgepodge on this. But in Virginia, when I'm governor, men won't be able to go expose themselves to little girls in public swimming pools. It'd be much better talking
Yeah,
point.
and
You get
you've-
votes from all over the spectrum on it.
In just a couple of minutes, you've recovered your sanity. You sound fantastic right now.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
We should, just for the record.
Well, you know, I'm Andy. I'm in New York. We should say I'm at the Sirius XM studio, so maybe that makes me, you know, I don't know, smarter, more authoritative, or something.
You're not doing this from your basement in Arlington. You know, Governor Youngkin, he did sign an executive order prohibiting males from using locker rooms for female athletes. So, I mean, he has shown leadership on this. You can disagree with him, but he's taken a position. Earl Sears has taken a position, and Spanberger is sort of, you know, I think we know what she would do. She would rescind that order. I think that's her position. I don't think it's.
I know, she won't
say so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a sin of omission. She's effectively lying to voters about. She's not telling them the truth about what her true intentions are. And she's, as I said, she's trying to have it all ways and please everybody. And usually that ends up pleasing nobody. And we'll see whether this, you know, we might look back and see that this is an issue that cost her the race. I mean, she's still up comfortably, but it looks like the race might be closing a little bit. So we'll see.
Guys, it is, as I said, Columbus Day and/or Indigenous Peoples Day, and we're fighting about it. There's a new House proposal from the GOP to withhold funding from U.S. jurisdictions that celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day instead of Columbus Day. It was Joe Biden who in 2021 formally recognized the second Monday in October as both Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day, setting us up for this kind of argument. This new bill envisions two separate holidays. Carl, what do you make of that?
Oh, I think the federal employees should definitely get another holiday. I think they work too hard. And plus, Tom picks on
the few that are left after this.
Tom picks on them all the time. Trump's trying to fire him. We're making them work without pay. It's the least we can do.
But Tom, seriously, you know, this made me think about this. This was kind of stupid, I think, to try to set up one day to celebrate both Columbus and Indigenous peoples as a sort of compromise. Because what it did is it basically, you know, set you up so that you sort of had to decide whether Columbus was a hero or the worst thing that ever happened to the Americas. And so it was sort of like it built the conflict right into the day. I mean, why not separate them into two or give 2 half days off? Why not? On separate days.
Why not just stick with Columbus Day? I mean, it was look, this was part of the excesses of George Floyd, and Joe Biden got bullied into this by his left-wing base. I mean, I don't think Joe Biden, he didn't campaign on getting rid of Columbus Day. But you remember what happened. I mean, there was all this, it was like a mob mentality, this fervor that was going around. We were tearing down statues of Civil War generals all around the country. And then we started getting into tearing down statues of the founding fathers and tearing down statues of Columbus. We mentioned, you know, in Baltimore Harbor, they sent Columbus into the bay, and Nancy Pelosi said, you know, oh, people do stuff. I mean, it was just, it was insanity, actually. And I think, you know, the pendulum has now swung back in a more reasonable position. But you still have, obviously, you know, Elizabeth Warren just said, Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. She would know. You know, it's like, it's still a thing for folks on the left. But I do think there is a desire to return to some sort of sanity. And I just think, you know, Columbus Day was Columbus Day for a long time. And you know, I think there's no reason to strip him of his holiday. There was no reason. And so I don't know that we, you know, it's become a needless fight, I think, in my opinion.
And Tom, Carl, if I'm reading Tom correctly, he just wants to get rid of Indigenous Peoples Day altogether, which I think would be difficult at this point. But
well, you could have another holiday if you want to call it Indigenous Peoples Day. I suppose.
What I'm saying.
We already have a holiday celebrating Indigenous people. It's called Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
That's when we celebrate the two cultures coming together. That doesn't please the far left of the
I was going to say
college type.
Go tell that to the humanities department at Harvard and see what you get.
You don't have to go that far. Caltrans, which is just what it sounds like, the trans transportation department at the state of California just tore down a statue of Father Sarah that was over the highway that had been there for, I think it was built in the early 70s. Been there 50 years. I remember when it went up, it was glorious. And there were some people, the San Jose Mercury News did a story, the LA Times, and they called these tribes, these tribes are small tribes. They have a few dozen members. And the tribe said, well, no, we didn't actually call for that. We want a conversation about this. We want maybe some of our statues. And the Caltrans, literally a faceless bureaucrat, we don't know who made this decision, they won't say, did it in the middle of the night and didn't even tell the local diocese, didn't even solicit input from the Catholic Church. And what happens, Father Sarah I grew up in California, he was a heroic person. He's a heroic person in the church. He brought, the Indians to Christianity. Well, we don't look at that as a benign thing anymore. We have a different perspective. And I think probably a more sophisticated, that's not a more inclusive perspective that wasn't all good, forcing these people to give up their native language and their native culture.
No.
But Christopher Columbus that's become something else. That's become a day of national pride for Italian Americans. And that's why when Pelosi refused to defend it, you realize how far this kind of the clutches of wokeness had gone into the Democratic Party, because that should have been an easy thing for her to do. As I mentioned last week, her brother was mayor when the statue was dedicated, and he loved the statue. So we have to be careful. And that's why I say, and I was being tongue in cheek about federal employees. I don't care about, that's not my interest here. My interest here is I think we should celebrate both cultures. I think Thanksgiving was a good way to do it. If we needed another day, have another day. But I agree with Tom. Let's keep Christopher Columbus. It's not about
listen, I'm not even Italian.
It's no longer. I'm not either. It's no longer about.
I'm full Tony Soprano on this. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, go Google Tony Soprano, Christopher Columbus, and watch the clip.
As long as we're talking about statues, and Carl, since you're in New York, especially at SiriusXM, Eric Adams has said that he is going to give the 2 statues of Columbus in New York historic designation in order to preclude Mondami, if he wins, from removing them. Because as you recall, Mondami posted this picture on social media before he was running for mayor.
Before he was Mamdani.
Before he was Mamdani, of him giving the finger to the statue.
And saying tear it down.
Saying take it down. Yeah.
Take it down.
So Eric Adams is sort of prophylactically moving to.
It's a preemptive pardon for Christopher Columbus.
Right. Yeah. Well, what do you make of that, Carl? You're in New York.
Yeah, I'm in New York. And they had to, they canceled the Columbus Day parade because of this nor'easter. And I thought
that was weather. I don't think that was Mondani.
I thought that was a bad omen. But then Eric Adams comes up with his plan. I think, okay, that's a good omen. So look, this poor guy, he won election. He was, African-American Democrat, friendly to the police. He seemed like Scoop Jackson come to life. He seemed like a return to John F. Kennedy style Democratic politics, and immediately got in trouble and got indicted and is unpopular. But this would be a parting gift to the city. And I think when we look back on it in the future, long after, I know Tom's going to live a long time, long after you and I are gone, Andy, I think
I am not that much older than Tom Bevan. I just want that for the record. Jesus, you make me sound like I'm on my death's door.
This frenzy that we have of changing everything, I think we'll think we went too far. And I think one of the ways we went too far, I mean, they tore down, as Tom pointed out, they tore down statues of Civil War generals from the Union who freed slaves. Right. And I think the Columbus thing will come in that category. And but if we need another holiday, we can have another holiday. All right. Well, AI is going to put everyone out of work anyway. We'll be looking for things to do.
It is the 250th anniversary of the founding of the U.S. Navy. And here to help us talk about this is David Craig. He is the editor of Real Clear Defense. David, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, and happy birthday, Navy.
Yeah, so it was founded on by the Second Continental Congress, 2 ships originally, October 13th, 1775. By the end of the Revolutionary War, the Navy had 50 ships Then what happened? David, bring us up to date.
Well, it's interesting. George Washington established the Navy, and his primary aim was to disrupt the Royal Navy. And of course, leading up to the Revolutionary War, it was to basically sabotage the Royal Navy and a coastal defense force. And then it was kind of contentious because after the Revolutionary War, it was actually disbanded for a couple years and then reestablished. And its initial goal was kind of just almost what the Coast Guard's mission is, to fight piracy out of the port in Rhode Island. But then it expanded. We got involved in the Barbary Wars, and it was expanded to really extend U.S. national interest abroad. So in some ways, no offense to the Army, the Navy sort of quickly became the most important U.S. military force. Yeah, I think many people forget it was actually disbanded for a couple of years.
Yeah, but David, you talk about George Washington. He saw the future, and I think it was in 1781, he wrote a letter to the Marquis de Lafayette and said, I'm doing this off the top of my head, you check the quote later, but he said, as certain as night follows day, without a decisive naval force, the United States could do nothing. And with it, everything honorable and glorious is possible. So he saw it.
Yeah, he was just a little bit more of an isolationist to a certain extent, but you're right. He did see the importance of having the Navy, and the only way to win the Revolutionary War was to have a decent Navy. It wasn't that he didn't invest in it. He just wasn't for the adventurism part of it. And then ironically, one of the first wars was the Quasi War in the Caribbean against the French, and then the Barbary Wars shortly after that.
Up to date, just to talk about the Navy today, there's 330,000 active duty personnel. We've got 289 deployable ships, 71 submarines, 2,500 operational aircraft. Big force, but it's supposed to get bigger, and it's supposed to cost a lot of money to do it. They have a plan to sort of build more ships. But the question is, do we need these big ships at this point? Is this really the way wars in the future will be fought, especially, when you're talking about aircraft carriers and things like that?
Yeah, that's a huge debate among the navalists, I guess you'd say, and the Navy community. The one thing I would say to that is that without having expeditionary air bases around the world, there's no replacing the aircraft carrier. Probably the secondary mission of a carrier strike group is to protect the aircraft carrier. So, throughout history of the military and our military, whenever there's something that comes up, like all these unmanned systems, you come up with a way to counter it and protect yourself from it. And that's what the Navy's doing right now. But when you say there's 289 deployable ships, that's kind of questionable. How many of them truly are ready to go? I don't think it's 289. And that's the big debate going forward, is how do we build more ships, better ships, in a cost-efficient manner? We don't even have the full ready-to-go amphibious ready groups that are statutorily required by Congress.
And David, when you look at like the threats that are out there, obviously China and the size of the military and Navy that they're building, the South China Sea, Taiwan's a flashpoint, a lot of stuff that's going to be happening in Asia is going to be water-based. And so how far behind are we, or how well equipped are we to handle some of those looming threats?
Right now, we're pretty good. However, just the sheer number of what China has available, the proximity to China, the South China Sea could become eventually a flashpoint. And I think, Steve Bannon just did a podcast about the birthday of the Navy and sort of declared the Pacific as the new strategic epicenter of the world, which would make our Navy, even more important than what we think it is right now. So it is a huge challenge. We can't pump out the number of ships China has, especially not just for the Navy, but even our civilian maritime force that, we're either buying from overseas, and we just can't build like China is building right now. So that's a huge threat.
The threat of drones in particular, when you talk about sort of naval warfare in the future, and especially in Asia. And, this is sort of I read this at least, that sort of every time we game out Taiwan, the war games, people do that, we lose. And one of the reasons we lose is because these drones just can swarm and overwhelm, sort of naval assets. And there's always this tension between offense and defense, and, which is ahead and which is behind. But it really seems like at this moment, at least, the use of drones, they're so cheap, they're so easy to produce, and the Chinese have so many of them that's a real sticking point, isn't it?
To a certain extent, however, we're learning lessons from the Russo-Ukrainian war and the new directive from the Pentagon to focus a lot on drones. It's not just drones, but it's how to counter them. So there's a lot of emerging systems coming out that can actually pretty well negate drones potentially by jamming them, electronic warfare, lasers. So there's a lot of other means. And, if drones were such a big deal, they probably would have been more decisive in the Ukraine war, which they haven't been, because at some point you have to take and hold land somewhere. So for the United States and the relationship with Taiwan, probably the most important thing is to make any attempt by China to invade Taiwan as painful as possible. And I'm not sure how effective drones by China would be, because the United States, Taiwan, and our other Asian allies will be able to do the same thing to China that they may attempt to do to Taiwan with unmanned systems.
David, last question. It's 250 anniversary today. Happy birthday, Navy. I'm not going to even go 250 years into the future, but say 100 years in the future. Do you think we'll still have a Navy, and will it still be relevant?
Absolutely. I mean, I can't remember what percentage of the globe is water, but we have the benefit of being a country that's isolated primarily by water. And if we're going to have an economy that relies on other countries and the rest of the world and interests overseas, we're always going to need a powerful Navy.
Well, and Andy, we often quote John Paul Jones, but we don't quote the full quote. He said, "I have not yet begun to fight for my appropriation."
That's a good one. All right. We're going to have to leave it there. You've been listening to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth. We've had David Craig with us. He's the editor of Real Clear Defense. You should check it out. Great read every morning, gets you up to speed on everything that's going in the U.S. defense industry. On behalf of Carl, Tom, and everyone here at Real Clear Politics, happy Columbus Day. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great